Well, here we are. Britt,
Here
Steve,
we
and
are.
Tara. First podcast interview. First podcast back after 4.5 months.
And
Okay.
truly, it's my honor to be here sitting beside you for this moment. I'm humbled to be here. I told you that from the beginning. We're gonna dig deep today.
Yeah, I have given Britt full permission to, there's nothing off topic. There's nothing I won't talk about. If I cry, I cry. It's just one of those things, but I'm excited and nervous to share the journey that I've been on, what led up to walking away, what I've been doing for 4.5 months, and what it's like to kind of get back into the swing of things and the mindset shift that I've had to make in order to be okay with coming back. Yeah.
I just want to honor the fact that this is such a huge gift to anybody who listens to this episode, anybody who's been a part of your world, and certainly a gift to me. I think that what you're doing is so beautiful and inspiring, and I know you're going to touch a lot of hearts. I'm excited to be here for the journey.
I mean, that's the hope, right? If I can just, I had to remind myself of that last night as I was getting a little bit nervous about, wow, now I'm really having to put myself back out there again, which even if you've been doing this for years, like we both have, there's still this kind of nerve of pressure, I guess, and it's self-inflicted. But if I can just make one person's day a little bit brighter, then this was a totally worthwhile adventure.
Totally agreed. And let's get into our journey together. But I want to say, I think even that was such a vulnerable share and so real. I think people assume you or I or people who have been doing this for a while have it all figured out. And we have the confidence is always on a level 10 and we never have a bad day and we never doubt ourselves. And that's just bullshit. That's not true. And so I think to give everybody the real is going to be powerful.
Yeah. So let's get into it. What do we got?
Let's do it. Okay. So for me, I want to go back. So I want to talk about how I realized that you had fired yourself and I'll tell everybody how we met. So Tara and I met, it's been a couple years. First of all, 2020 seems like it doesn't count. So for some, that was a year. And then I think there was another year, but a few years ago, we met backstage at an event.
It was actually last year.
Was it really?
Oh, wait, no, it would have bbeen 2019. It would have been, BBD 2019.
See, told you, 2020 doesn't count. That's what I'm saying. So it feels like last year. Exactly. So it feels like a year ago, but it was probably 2. And it was fast friends. Tara came up to me and she was like, hey, I feel like we should connect. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And ever since, you're my girl. And there was this instant trust factor. And so what our relationship looked like is we would just kind of touch base with each other from time to time, exchange voice memos.
Yeah. At least on my end, it was total fangirling. Hey, Britt, love the episode.
Get out of here. Did not feel like that to me. So thank you. So what happened was I woke up early one morning in April and you crossed my mind. It was like this flash of oh, Tara, I haven't talked to her in a while. Let me see what's going on. So the first thing I did was I went to your Instagram and I was like, whoa, everything's going on. And it had been at that point several weeks since you had shared.
2 months.
2 months. Since you had shared to me really beautifully, openly, and honestly about the fact that you couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I reached out and was like, oh my gosh, tell me everything. How can I help you? What is happening? So break it down for us. What happened? You disappeared a little bit. What happened?
Yeah. And I think the podcast probably is even more surprised because I didn't announce it on the podcast. So in my phone, I have probably 3 or 4 episodes I was recording and just never released it. It felt too heavy to even do that. And it's interesting because when I messaged you, it was right after I let my team go, but before I announced it publicly that I was stepping back. And I'm in hindsight, and I'm getting chills right now. I'm so glad you weren't able to respond or you didn't see the message for a while, because I was looking to you to be how do I save this? Now that I've taken one step, because I was scared, right? Because walking away from something that you've spent years building. I mean, I've been doing this since 2016, that I was looking to you to be give me a reason to keep going and that it'll get better. But I was so miserable. And it was interesting that after the 2 months, I actually never stopped working. I probably took maybe 3 weeks off. And during that time, I had a company reach out to me wanting to acquire the business, which was the hope. I mean, ultimately, because I had built so much and I know there's value. I just didn't know if there was value in taking Tara out of it, or could I be a consultant, somebody else run the back end of the business and me still do the parts that I'm good at? But isn't that why I hired a team and I spent so much money and years building out a team? That in the process of going through the acquisition and trying to figure out if it was something that had value to it and getting the business organized is when I really saw the impact and the value. Even the video that I released on Instagram had, I think it had several hundred comments of not a single one was negative. Not a single one of like, yeah, you've kind of lost your touch, or like all these fears that you think are people are just going to be mean. It was all these people sharing stories of how it impacted them that I had no idea about. And that's something that Britt, I'm sure you can relate to. And anybody who has an online business, we don't have that in-person connection. And especially last year, that validation that what we're saying is connecting with someone. So we're kind of pulling it out of our ass a lot of just like, I think this is what they need to hear, but I have no visual or, confirmation. And to be honest with you, so much of what I spent the past year and a half, 2 years doing and building out a team was removing myself from connection with my audience, because that was the methodology that we were being taught by a shared mentor that Britt and I had, which worked for him. But for me, I need, I remember him saying like, oh, are you doing this for your ego? No, I need to know if my audience is reacting, if I'm helping, because if I don't know I'm helping, then what's the point? So that was really validating for me that, wow, what I created was really amazing and impactful, which was the whole goal. And then going through the business, like getting into the nitty gritty of what I had created, was there value in it? And when I realized the value in it, about a month later, after announcing that, I was like, there's still value here. I can figure out how to make this work without all the complications that I brought into it up to that point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was kind of what happened from when I announced it on Instagram. I announced it to my members. I actually never shut down my membership. I was giving them until May. And then at the end of March, I announced actually we're keeping it and we're going to just kind of start revamping it. So that was what happened after the announcement. My personal life also went to shit. A lot of people don't know that we actually moved from Southern California to Nashville in October. So in the middle of the pandemic, we were like, we're done with California. To be honest with you, the business after the pandemic was becoming more, it was harder. As much as like our industry was impacted, and especially the environment that California was in, we were financially struggling, and I was the sole supporter. My husband's still struggling with PTSD. His PTSD kicked up really bad when the kids were all of a sudden home all the time, because his PTSD is related to the volume level and the chaos of the kids. And it became a lot of pressure on me. And I kept trying to come up with new ideas. Unfortunately, I didn't have the team that could really step up and help support. They were there functionally, but they weren't helping me to grow the business or to pivot or shift in the ways that we needed to help serve everyone. And I went hiding. I just wanted to do tasks that weren't in front of the camera. Anytime I was in front of the camera last year, I remember wrapping Christmas presents, trying to do a live and just being like, I have no idea what I'm saying right now. Like, this is so inauthentic. I'm just trying to show up because it's what I'm supposed to do on social media. Right. But my heart wasn't in it. I was disconnected from my audience. So I had no idea what their struggles were. It almost felt too heavy to be on social media. It felt too heavy for everybody else's stress level, because I was going through my own fears and struggles that honestly, like, weren't even really all that much pandemic related, other than my kids were home a lot more. And that just put more pressure on me. So, yeah, I don't even know where I'm going with this. It's just, that was the journey.
You're going deep, and I love it.
We got COVID, and that's really what kicked everything off.
I was going to say, like, what was the tipping point? When were you, first of all, I relate to literally everything you're saying. I think that, I don't know how many educators listen to your podcast, but that's like that's almost like our dirty little secret as educators, that 2020 could have destroyed just about all of us. There's an economic downturn. The confidence you have in yourself hits an all-time low. And to exactly what you're saying, people don't realize that when you show up just digitally, you don't get that real-time feedback. And with that shared mentor we had, when you're coached to keep pulling back, keep detaching, that is amplified times 100, and it is terrifying, and it's not authentic to either you or I. So I'm on that similar journey of like reconnecting and falling in love with all my people all over again. I so echo everything you're saying. 2020 was a trip. And so tell us, like, what was the breaking point? When were you like, nope, I literally can't even show up? Like, you tried to fight through that live on Christmas, but when did you hit the point where you're like, I don't even want to do this?
I got COVID mid-January. My husband, so when we moved to Tennessee, like my husband, part of his mental health gets released and like really solid when he does jujitsu. So we knew the risks going into it, that there was no socially distancing. And to me, the benefit of him being able to do that consistently was far outweighing the risks that we had, as you know, people who we weren't really all that in the high risk category. So it was something that honestly, if he wasn't able to do jujitsu, which he wasn't in California, it was toxic to our whole life. So he did that, and then that's how he got it. Was a guy had COVID, but he didn't know until the next day. And then I got it the worst out of our family. Luckily, I was not. I was never hospitalized, anything like that. My sister-in-law's a surgeon, so I was constantly messaging her, just like checking in. Is there anything I need to do? But it was like, I remember when my husband tested positive for it, and we had all, there was like, we had quarantined, but we were all going to get it if somebody had it. I was like prepping meals, all this kind of stuff, because I knew it was going to take me out, and we don't have a support system here. And I wouldn't have even flown my parents out because that would have been risking them, and they hadn't had the vaccine yet and all that. So it amplified everything I was already feeling. I remember the week before, here's the whole manifesting universe part showing up, sobbing on the floor to my therapist, being like, I wish something would happen to me where people didn't have to rely and be so dependent on me. And that happened. It was, wow, I'm getting emotional about it. Yep. I didn't want to kill myself, but I knew, to me, that was the cry for help, that I'm depressed. I've been depressed before. I've been in that place before where I just can't handle the life that I created. Yeah, I am smart enough to know that I created this reality for myself, but it felt really trapping. I took about a week off of work with COVID. I got into a really dark place and more or less had this conversation of, what are you doing that you built a life that you don't want to go back to? Like, there is nothing more important than your life being okay. So what other things, what other influences, what other thoughts, beliefs did you have that got you to the point where you felt like you didn't want to go back to your life? That you would rather be sick, in bed, even hospitalized if you have to have the shift that you want, this like dramatic pivot in your life. Why do you need permission from a disease or a sickness or an illness to have the life that you want? That's not the existence I want. That's not what I would want for my children. And that was the wake up call for me, that nothing was worth me feeling that way. And that I wasn't able to impact the people in the lives that I know it was possible with where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was, I decided I was still sick with COVID. I'm pretty sure, when I was like, I just need to walk away from the business. I need to let my team go. And in a lot of ways, I knew there were issues with the team. I knew that was one of the biggest battle points for me to get to another level that I wanted to get to. And that's no disrespect to the team that's listening, because I know they probably are, because they're surprised probably because I haven't told them, but they could only get me so far. And they apparently were searching for jobs while I was sick instead of running the business and really trying to carry it forward. So it became very easy to let that go, to give myself permission to walk away and figure it out and I wanted to give myself 3 months off to just process. Fortunately, we had a lot of equity in our house sale from California. And so I was blessed enough and had the privilege enough to be able to do that. I thought going back to a job might work, so I was looking for jobs here in Nashville. I know I can kill it in a lot of jobs. I just wanted to take the pressure off and provide stability for my family financially. And I didn't end up doing that, but yeah, COVID, especially during that time, one of, you probably know her, but one of our mastermind people, her father had just passed away from COVID. And so she was very active trying to keep on top of me. So it was a really scary, dark place to be in, with something that is killing people, and that people are having such battles with this. So there's guilt with like getting it and then surviving it. There's guilt with, did I expose other people, and how is this impacting my life? So it was a culmination of a long time depression probably kicking in, as well as not having a support system, getting sick, and a business that was sucking the ever living life out of me.
You said two things that I want to talk a little bit more about. One, you talked about the shared person that we know who lost her father to COVID, and people reaching out or trying to support you. To anybody else who knows somebody who's going through a dark time, depression, hopelessness, whatever those feelings are, is there anything that anybody could or did or said that helped you? Is there anything that would have been amazing? Is there anything that anybody did where you were like, wow, that was powerful for me?
For me, I'm trying to think if there were specific instances. Honestly, like I've been really lonely.
Mm.
So there wasn't much support coming my way. I was starting with a new therapist, and she really helped to shift self-care and being selfish and being okay. Because in a lot of ways, if you're a martyr, if you're somebody who's a people pleaser, you put other people's needs constantly in front of yours. And she really helped me to see just that was the cause and the demise, and how much that was impacting even just small little things of like, if you don't take care of yourself, this is the place you're always going to end up back at. And so it almost became, I guess I kind of got to the point where I like self-care was a necessity. That was like my life preserver. So even doing things like I started getting in with Reiki, which I'd done before, but didn't really, I was like, whatever. That was a nice little relaxing time. But I went to a guy that really, even if it was just an hour of me just laying there without hearing mom, 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 you know, like I would always feel like because of the PTSD trauma with my family, I feel like I'm the stable parent, right? Like that, God bless my husband, he is trying, and that is his greatest quality, but he is not the stable parent for them. And so I was constantly trying to balance work and home and being there for my kids and being the stable parent at the sacrifice of my emotional stability. So then I was actually working opposite of what I was trying to do. So putting, you know, hiring a babysitter to come twice a week, even if that meant spending more money that we didn't necessarily have, but in putting my self-care first, going to Reiki anytime I felt an emotional kind of disturbance or wasn't feeling on my game, going to therapy weekly, going to couples therapy weekly. I asked my husband to move out at one point. We had a really bad fight. So all of these things that I was not giving myself permission to do before. And I think in a lot of ways, it was a relearning of trusting my gut again, because I was denying so much of what my body was telling me I needed and what my soul was needing, because it felt like I was taking myself away from my children and the business and all these people who needed me, which is why I didn't want to be needed anymore, because it came at the sacrifice of me being healthy.
Mm. So true. And we know that we can't pour from empty, but it's so easy to let your own cup get drained because there is no time to fill it back up. And
Right.
you hit that place. Can we talk for a minute about like the societal pressure of women in business to be all of the things? And how did you make the distinction of, I can't just keep fighting through this. I can't just, I'll power through and I'll be there for the kids and I'll do all the things. White knuckle it. I'll be fine. Like I can do this. How did you know that like, no, I can't do this? And what advice do you have for other women, like feeling, or men or anybody, but feeling that immense pressure of, wow, I'm supposed to be and do all of the things, be the incredible wife, the amazing mother, the phenomenal daughter, and I run a business. And what advice? Look at me. And I've got it all together, because heaven forbid you don't. What advice do you have for that, or anybody who's feeling that pressure?
Oh my gosh. I feel like we all do. In so many ways, one of the biggest ahas over the past few months for me has been just how much we operate almost robotically, or just based on like without intention. So when we start to perform, a lot of us are, very high achievers. Where does that stem from? Why are we trying to achieve things? Who is that really serving? Who is that really for? And if it's not for you, you have to really question why. For me, it's a lot of work of letting go of, not to say, I wouldn't say I had traumas as a child, but a lot of expectations, a lot of people pleasing came from my childhood. And that has not served me well as an adult, because it's caused me to overwork to try and achieve basically attention from my dad. That nothing has changed, like I've made more money than him at times, and I've done everything, that was kind of last year. And the biggest disappointment, I think, was us moving out of Southern California and away from them. But it was like, this is your dream. I created a life that's your guys' dream and not mine. And it felt really empowering to choose something for me and for my family that felt really in alignment. And even just like the signs that the universe was giving me that we were heading in the right direction. Even when we came out to Nashville to look at houses, songs like Home by Sean, I think it's whoever the guy sings Home was like on the radio. Justin Timberlake came on, he's from Memphis, like all these signs that we were just looking at of like, this feels aligned. There are no red flags, and how the universe just kind of opens up the direction that you're supposed to go in rather than you constantly fighting that. So yeah, when you're feeling pressure to grow a business, to provide for your family, really stopping to take a second to even write down what it is that you're trying to accomplish. What am I working towards, rather than I want a successful business? Well, what does that even mean? I had to redefine that when I was shut down. I was like, look, if the business can just provide a few $1,000s for me to bring in and I get to impact women, that's probably pretty good for right now, especially because the alternative is I shut it down, I don't impact anybody, and I don't have any income coming in. If I want bigger goals, what is that specifically? Getting clear on what it is that you're trying to do here so that you're not having these vague statements. And I talk to my students about this all the time. They're like, I want to be fully booked. Well, what does that even mean? How many clients is that? At what price point? You can be fully booked, working 20 hours a day, barely making minimum wage. So fully booked may mean something different to you versus me versus successful business here versus your version of a successful business. But I think we just look at the vision of somebody else's life and go, I think I want that. But again, we're not seeing the behind the scenes, right? And I think you and I, every influencer is guilty of that. Like, we want to paint this picture of you can have it all, but also that's going to come at some cost and some sacrifice. Are you okay with that? Some people may not be okay. When I started my lash business, my goal was to have 4 clients a day and be done working by 5 o'clock so I could be home to put my son to bed every single night. I was unwilling to make that sacrifice to work when he was at home, or my dream of being a mom very much had to do with snuggles and bedtime and, that nighttime routine. But somebody else may not, that they may not have kids, or they may not value that time, or they actually like working at night because then their husband's home to take care of the kids or whatever. So it's getting clear on why it is you're doing what you're doing. Because if you're not clear on that, you're going to run around chasing everybody else's dream and everybody else's Instagram version of what you think is success without really knowing what it takes behind the scenes.
This is so true. And you're essentially buttoning up the story of success. Success is a trip. And to what you said, I think a lot of us in the industry are achievers. And so you start achieving and the feeling is addicting. And so you're like, I want to keep achieving. I want more. What's next? What's next? What's next? And when this constant search of what's next, until you're like, oh my gosh, look at the reality I've created. How did I even get here? Right. And you look around, you're like, oh, this is what I guess this is what I wanted, but somehow you've ended up there. And I agree with you. I think that I talk about like the 4 areas of wealth. Money's great. It's one of the areas of wealth. Love money. Everybody does need it. Makes the world go round. But then there's health and time and what I call love, or like relationships. And it's like, if we were actually forced to choose, like, listen, do you want more money, or do you want more time with your family, better relationships and love, and for your health to be at its peak, It's like those 3 are clearly more important, yet we put them on the back burner.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for other people listening who are like, I get all that, but I need the money? Like, you got to the place where you were like, I need the money too. It's not like we can do without, but I can't keep doing this anymore. Like, what advice do you have for the person who's on that crossroads of, I likely need to take a step back like Tara did, but I can't afford it? Like, when you have that money story that's telling you, no, you can't even take care of yourself. What if you make your clients mad? You better keep showing up and just power through. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, it's a big shift on looking at money is not the end result. Like you said, like, we want what we think money is going to get us, but we don't know what money's going to get us until we have some. So a lot of people who don't have money, who are struggling to make, like, paycheck to paycheck is such a common issue, both in our industry and in our culture. And you give yourself so much more freedom of choice, which is ultimately, I think, what we all want. We want to have choice. We don't want money and the lack of money to make our choices. We want to be in charge of our choices, no matter what it's going to cost. So what behaviors do you have? What beliefs do you have around money that are causing you to think, I'm broke? I can't do X because I don't have enough, or I can't afford it. Because there's always a way. And even listening to your podcast this morning, you said, come from a place of possibilities. That's how I took the Lashpreneur, from losing money every single month, even though I was making $2,000 a month at this side hustle. It was costing me more to run the business, to looking, and then I had to invest in a $2,000 course and then a $3,000 course, looking at which course should I buy. it was actually our shared mentor who was like, well, what would happen if you invested in both courses? What's the possibilities then? I don't have that kind of money right now, but if I had stayed there, the Lashpreneur never would have taken off, because it was what I learned from the courses that helped me to scale, grow, learn what I needed to learn, so that not only was I getting that $5,000 investment back into courses, the first time I launched the Lashpreneur, like learning how to launch it, I made $13,000. So if I had held on to that $5,000, it would have cost me $7,000. So what is it already costing you to stay in this place of, I can't afford X? Like you and I have, I think our programs are the same price. Like we get this objection all the time. People will always want to pay the lowest amount they possibly can. So when you're asking how much should I charge for my services? Well, if you're asking from a customer perspective, I had this in my group today. She's like, look, my ideal clients, they struggle with employment. I don't want to be overpriced for them. And I'm like, well, maybe we don't market to people who can't afford luxury services or services at all. And we look at what is it we're trying to achieve? Because her goal really is to impact this LGBTQ community, but she can't do that if she can't even survive. So we stop looking at how can we make this okay for others, and how do we look at our money as a means of growing the impact we have, whether it's with you personally, whether it's with your family. Because look, you guys can look at all of the Kardashians of the world. I mean, they have the most amount of money in the world, yet none of them can keep a husband. No judgment to them, but they struggle with happiness, right? So money isn't always the equal of happiness. So if you want more money, what is that tool going to give you? Is it going to give you stability? Is it going to give you peace of mind? Is it going to give you a safe place over your head? Great, let's start there. Let's start small. This month, I just want to have an extra $500 in my business. Great, how do we break that down into clients or increase in sales? Or can I upsell one client? Start to get, when you have a plan, at least for me, having a plan always feels so much more secure, because I know the plan can change, but at least I've got 1 or 2 steps that I can start working towards. And I love action. I'm a person who just, when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling insecure or anxious, action helps me relieve that. And so what is one action I can take that will help me work towards the goal that I'm trying to achieve?
I live for that. Gosh, you gave me a moment right there. That was beautiful. You're talking about action. And one of the big things I've learned from you is the difference between brave action and confident action. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, you and I are probably the same way. We oftentimes focus on perfection, right? We want something to be perfect before we put it out into the world. I'm coming up with a new masterclass, and I just, oh God, I want it to be perfect. It took me 3 weeks to record this 1 freaking hour class because it just didn't feel right? It was based off of feelings. The confidence that we're searching for, whether it comes to running a business, whether it comes to our application or a technique, doesn't come without experience. You get confidence based on your experiences. The more experiences you have of running a business, of dealing with clients, of no-shows, of bad reviews, the more tools and knowledge you have on how to handle that. That's where your confidence comes from. But you don't get confidence first and then get all the experiences. The confidence comes from experiences. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Action or confidence? Action does. And sometimes, most of the time, that requires us being brave and stepping out because it's not something we've ever done before. I talk about this all the time. The first time I went live on Instagram, back in the day when that was the only option you had, right? It was like feed posts and going live. My entire live on Instagram was a gray screen. And I thought, well, that just must be the way Instagram Live is, because I've never done it before. And then I was about to show something on my computer screen, and I went to go turn my phone and showed my messy ass house live on Instagram because I didn't realize the front camera was on, because I had it leaning against my screen the whole time. That was the first Instagram Live I ever did, and you just went with it, right? And so it's how are you supposed to know how to run a successful business if you've never done it before? Nobody knows how to do it. We're not born knowing how to run businesses. We're not knowing social media. We don't know how to raise kids. We're not born with this knowledge. It comes from experience. And especially if you have never had any sort of job, corporate experience, if you've never been inside of a business on the back end, as most of our industry hasn't, you have no idea how the ins and outs work. And it's going to be a learning process. And you're going to have to fail and make mistakes in order to learn, to then be more confident the next time you face that obstacle. And I totally believe that even me stepping back and firing myself, is the greatest step that I will have taken in order to get to that 7-figure mark that I've been aiming for a long time. I have no doubt, and I knew this going into it, that this is going to be the greatest learning lesson for me, because it feels like the biggest failure in a sense, even though I don't find it as failure, but it is the biggest, I feel like, risk I had to take in order to get to the version of the business that I wanted, to have the impact that I wanted, and to get to the income levels that I wanted. Every time that I feel stress and tension in my business, I somehow end up like searching Amy Porterfield jobs or Michael Hyatt jobs, or I'm just like looking at Craigslist of like, there'd probably be an easier way to make money with the skills that I have than trying to do this. And that always comes right before some sort of big transformation in my business, because it's scaring me. And I want to play that way. I want to play big, where I'm doing stuff that scares me, because I don't want to stay in my comfort zone. I get bored easy.
Have you heard my quote, fear happens on the edge of greatness? It's like my favorite, and it's not mine. I'm sure I got that somewhere else, but it's one of my favorite sayings is like, when that fear comes up, it's because you're on the cusp of something massive. And the fear, the hugeness of it makes us want to like retreat, like run for the hills, forget it, I'll just be somebody's employee. This is too big. But if you can like walk through the fire, and listen, sometimes we can't, and I totally get it. But if you can, there's so much goodness on the other side. So when you talk about brave action versus confident action, I would argue that when you fired yourself, that was incredibly brave, incredibly brave. And I think showing up now is brave too. Have you conceptualized like the confidence that has come from that just yet? Like, are you already feeling a renewed confidence? Like, can you bottle it up? Can you make it tangible? Or do you feel like it's just starting to build?
I think in some ways, once this is out public and I have to show back up public, because I've showed up for my students, I think in a different way. I've become way more connected with my community. I got on phone calls with them. Like, I took the time, which I wasn't willing to do last year, to talk with my members for 30. It was supposed to be like a 20-minute call, often they were like an hour, because I was just diving in on where they were at. And that's where this is my zone of genius: the coaching, the strategy, the problem solving, the mindset, not team meetings, not all the other junk that like drained me. And so that was really clarifying for me of, where my zone of genius is and where I should spend my time and energy, and what gives me life and makes me enjoy the business. I think in a lot of ways, the confidence that I'm bringing now is more the clarity that I have on who I serve, who I don't serve, who can I please, who can I not please. So much of last year, I think for most people, it was a real fear of saying the wrong thing, hurting somebody's feelings when we're already so raw, we're already so afraid. And if I can start to put the message out there that we're all going through junk, that we have no idea what somebody else is going through, and to just come from a place of compassion and empathy and ask a lot of questions. I think that I got that from your episode this morning when I was listening to it, was asking questions about somebody's experience rather than getting offended, getting pissed off, leaving nasty comments because you're offended by what they said based on your interpretation of it, not their meaning of it. So many ways that's what I want to bring into the industry, to my platform, is empathy, because I feel like in a lot of ways we've just gone so far away from empathy because of our own pains. Like for me last year, it was really hard to show up on social with all of the conversations going around Black Lives Matters and Asian hate and all of these really, really painful communities that were experiencing so much loss and pain. As somebody who's an empath, and I'm not trying to minimize them, but I have a hard time, I can't watch the news. I can't watch tragedies. And so I had to remove myself from being exposed to so much of that pain, because I become unstable in my life. And that was part of what contributed to the depression, was I can't function when I'm feeling others' pains. So it was hard for me to show up even for my members who were asking about business, which I knew about because of the global pain that was happening. And so if you are an empath, if you feel other people's energies and the way that they're feeling very deeply, yeah, you're going to be paralyzed, especially during a pandemic, when globally everybody is freaking out and fearful. Every time you go on the news, every time you log on online, on social media, you have a very hard time finding sources of positivity and motivation. And so in a lot of ways for me, it's been freeing for me to know if I always come from a place of empathy, and if I can help somebody else see that we're all kind of struggling how to show up for each other, how to show up for our clients, how are our clients struggling. Even just remembering their kids' names can be a step in the right direction for that connection that we're all looking for. We all want to feel heard. We all want to feel understood. We all want to feel validated. So how can we pour into ourselves so that we can give that to others? And I think that as influencers, as educators, as stylists who are connecting with customers who have their own junk, they're coming in with their own baggage, how can we show up for them in a way that feels really connective?
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's so powerful. And I think that's timeless advice. Like, we both know when you're in a career or profession where you're a service professional, like you're a lash artist, you're a makeup artist, you're a hairstylist, you are serving, and you are serving up emotional energy and emotional support at the highest level, and you get your lashes done at the end. But also it's that they come in because they want to have a laugh. They want to tell you about the drama they experienced last week. They want to question your beliefs on a lot of things. That's some really heavy stuff. And unless you are emotionally ready and feeling like, yeah, I want to take that on, it is an impossibility, and it will completely tear you down. Yeah. And until you do what you just did and take care of yourself, you can't possibly serve others at your highest. And I think it is so beautiful and commendable that you were like, I want to still be there for my people. This is how I can do it. I need to heal myself. I need to reconnect. I need to hop on the phone one-on-one. It's not about what's the latest on, reels. It's like, no. Let me get down to the nitty gritty and actually make human connection again and do this from a place of authenticity. I just think that's so freaking beautiful.
So Britt, let me ask you, how do you pour into yourself? Like, if you're feeling drained, if you're feeling like you've been just pouring out to others so often and you know that you need some Brit love, how do you do that?
Such a great question. I'm also a work in progress on that. So I could talk a good game, but I'm just going to be honest instead.
Here's what I recommend, 5 steps.
Yeah. I can tell you what to do. So what I've realized over the last few years is there's this, we need to have an equal balance of input and output. And I think input and output comes in all sorts of forms. So this, to me, we're talking and connecting, we're having this great experience, but it's output for both of us. We're both outputting quite a bit of emotional energy to do this, and time and all these other things too, right? Happy to be here, but we're in output mode. Yeah. And then we're going to go and work on our computers and do whatever, output, make some Instagram posts, output. And as business owners in general, we focus really heavily on the output because we're like, well, if I don't show up, if I don't do more, if I don't take on an extra service, if I don't output, I won't get the success that I'm looking for. When the reality is, if you are over outputting in anything, you'll run the well dry. There's only so much water to give. And it's the input that allows you to serve and output at your very highest. And I don't know about you, but I noticed that sometimes I would convince myself like, well, I don't have time to read. I don't have time to get a massage. I don't have time to go on a run with the dogs. I have 1,000 other things to do. I can focus on the 1,000 other things, but I won't be inspired. I won't be happy. I'll be a terrible wife and mother because I'll be so short-tempered because now I'm exhausted. And I can continue to output, but the result of that output is no good. Like, nobody even wants what I'm serving up. I don't know about you, but there's been times where I've sat down to write a caption or a podcast, and I'm like, I don't even have anything nice to say because
the past 4 days, I'm like,
yes,
I have to go back out in the public, and I am uninspired. That's why I was like, great, Britt's coming on, I'll get inspired.
I'll try my darndest. I will. But that's the trip for me. And I've noticed I'm one of those people, I'm like, a massage is relaxing to me, but also I'm sitting there and I'm like, I should be taking notes while I'm getting this because my mind, you're doing your mind is running signal with your hand. That's exactly how I feel. I'm like, if I massage and take notes at the same time, I'd actually probably be at my highest, because that's when I find clarity and inspiration and I fall in love with the work I do again. It's that white space. It's yes. Prioritizing that white space is truly the only way.
Yeah. And that's why it's so interesting when you probably face this with your students when they're coming up with their schedule, and, some of them haven't taken vacation in years. They won't allow themselves, but who are you waiting for?
Yeah. They're waiting for
you. It's been 6 years. You should take a vacation now.
That's what they're waiting for. Someone to show up with the giant check and the plane ticket and be like, and you're off. And that day is just never coming. And then there's the fear of, and I have this irrational fear too. If I take time off, my clients will hate me. If I take time off, my audience will abandon me. My competitors will scoop them up, and then I'll be living on the streets. It's like you create the scenario where it's, no, that's never going to happen. But you convince yourself that there is not enough time, there's not enough money, there's not enough capacity to take care of yourself. And it's just about the worst possible thing that you could do. And when it comes to self-care, I do think it comes in different forms. I don't know how you are, but a lot of people are like, meditation and yoga and Pilates. I can't do any of that ish. My brain is like too fast. I can't. But I found that like, if I run with my dog, it's like a very like almost spiritual, like that to me is meditation. That's when I feel like I'm taking care of myself. So I think self-care comes in a lot of forms. Like if browsing the aisles of Target without any kids with you feels good. I mean, it's like romantic, like it feels good to all of us. I think
the checkout line, you're like, I came here for chocolate. Like, why am I spending $600?
Because it feels great. And that can be self-care. Like, I think a lot of us think like self-care equals trip to Maui. And yeah, I love that too, but it could be so much smaller. And it's like finding those little moments of truly every single day to put yourself first. It's the only way.
I've become a gardener during.
I love that.
Last year we were gardening in Southern California, which is very deserty and very hot. So we killed everything. But this year I'm like YouTubing it. I've landscaped my front yard. We've got like 8-foot tall tomato plants. I'm just like the best plant mob. I have a hobby for the first time in decades. Like, yeah.
Okay, can you please talk about that on your stories? Because I need all the tips. I am one of those people who kills every plant she starts, so I need all the pro tips.
I thought, and if this Lashpreneur thing doesn't work out, I'll just start a gardening YouTube channel and I'm
in. But please do this too, because this I just absolutely love. Please just do it all. Okay, so what's next? What is on your heart? Do you even know what's next? Like, tell me what you think is on the horizon.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I took 2020 and just almost labeled it as my business is a failure, not external forces were coming in. Because if I look back to 2019, like just erase 2020 out of the head, we were growing hugely. We were almost at 1,000 members in my membership, which was a huge milestone for me. So I think in a lot of ways, where the Lashpreneur is going, my goal is to shift to not be as polished and not be as, here's the 3 steps. It's more being me. I think that's in a lot of ways why I was hiding last year, is I felt like I had to only put out this type of content rather than share what was really going on. And I know for me, the type of content I'm attracted to is more of that real, both getting to know the person and the value in which they add to your business or your life. So yeah, I do think I don't want to show up as, I want to connect more with people. So my goal with the podcast is actually to just start coaching people, have them apply to come on the podcast and just do coaching. Because for content creation, it makes my life so much easier because I don't have to prepare a whole lot. Really, then I can get to go deeper with people. People can understand what it's like to get coaching. It's almost like a big group coaching call with several thousand people listening. So that's the goal with the podcast is, yes, have some specific steps and action items, but also just really move into the coaching side of things so people can have their own transformations through listening. And then really, I think in a lot of ways, what some of my struggles were last year, at least with the business, was trying to do too many things and trying to have too many programs. People were struggling getting a business started, but then they were also struggling to grow their business or add a team or do all these different things. So I was trying to come up with 7 different types of programs or offers or products, rather than really refining the society. And I did start doing one-on-one coaching, which has been really rewarding for me to work so intimately with somebody on their business. But yeah, really just focus on the Lashpreneur Society and the customer experience of that. So much of what I think a lot of business owners lack, which surprises me because it comes so naturally to me, but maybe that's the empath, is the experience of your customers and how that can far outweigh any price point that you may pay. Or the result is if they feel valued, taken care of, if they feel good when they leave, whether you're the best at what you do or not, that itself is worth a lot of money, especially as we're all kind of going back out into a world where we have been so isolated and not feeling at our best, that if you can make them feel their best walking out, even if you're not, charging the best, if they can have a comfortable bed, if they can just have me time where you're not yapping the whole time. I know for hairstylists, some of y'all love to chat. I'm the type of person who just like, I want to go in there and I don't want you to talk to me. So it's just really gauging your customers. What is it you need today? Even asking the question, what would make a wow experience for today? And show up for your client that way. And so that's kind of where I'm kind of taking the cue on my own book of like, how can I show up for my students? What is it they need from me? For the audience, like when I started outsourcing social media, our DM rate tanked. I used to get like at least 4 or 5 DMs a day. And then when somebody else took it over, it's like crickets. So y'all DM me with your questions because I answer them. Every single one of them I answer. But yeah, just really focusing more back on the connection to get clarity on how I can serve. Because that is the purpose. Like nobody can take that away from me. That was something, even closing the business down. It was like, I know I'm going to serve. I know I'm going to make women's lives better because that's on my heart. I don't know what that looks like, or if that's going to be a business, or if I'm going to do it under somebody else's wing, or if I'm just going to empower people on a different level that aren't in the Lash world. I don't know what that is, but that's what calls to me. And that's what speaks to me because I know how much value that's had in my life and the people that have spoken in my life.
Yeah. I love that. And I know that to be true. Like to your audience, I've posed the question to Tara before, like probably in 2019 or 2020, like, who are you and what do you do? And she has always said, like, I serve, I empower. And it's on that scale of like, I know I am here to do good. Like, I know that's on your heart because you've shared it with me so vulnerably. I think you are so on the right track as always. I think one of the best things that came out of 2020 is that like human connection is trendy again. Like being authentic, like talking to people, and like, instead of having everything be so automated and so robotic and so like you're being churned through a machine, everything you're saying is exactly what we need. And I think that the work you're doing is so beautiful. I saw a quote recently where it said, you can't butter 12 pieces of toast with 1 teaspoon of jam or something like that. And to what you're saying, we do that where it's like, well, I have 1 teaspoon of jam and I want to make breakfast for a dozen people. So I'm just going to spread it out. I'm just going to do my absolute best. And then the toast tastes like garbage. And that's what happens when we try and do 1,000 things. Yeah. Where if instead you just tried to make one incredible piece, you use the full tablespoon there, it would be a beautiful breakfast. And I feel like that's where you are, is I'm not going to try and do 50 things. Okay. I'm going to serve from my heart and my highest as best as I possibly can. And that is more than enough. Yeah. I just think I am so proud of you and humbled by you and inspired by you and grateful for all of the work you do, no matter what that looks like. I'm your fan for life. If you decide to make a gardening channel, I'm here for it.
Here for it, Tennessee garden.
Here for it. That's it. But I know there's beauty professionals who love you and need you, and we all admire your heart. So I'm grateful for you, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk with you today. I'm your biggest fan. I'm cheering you on so big.
I can't wait to do live events again. That's like next year's phase, so that I can get you to come speak to the audience, because that was like the big to do last year. Was I was gonna have Britt come speak at our live event, and that was right around the COVID time just kicked off. So.
It was you were my only commitment. I was only going to do my Thrivers Live and then you. So I'll take a rain check on that. I'll see you in 2022. That's a deal.
Maybe it'll be in Montana whenever you move there, right?
Hey, don't go spilling my secrets just yet, but maybe I'll be a Midwest girl by then. We'll see.
I've got family there, so
Good.
Come visit.
Good. I'm in.
Thank you so much, Britt. It's gosh, I need to have you to come on and talk about business someday, but this has been amazing. And I'm so glad we finally got to do this, because I know we've been talking about it for a while. And if you guys are not following Britt, she is crazy inspiring for me. So I know she will be doing the same for you. So Britt, where can they learn more about you? Where can they follow you, hear more about you?
You're too kind. You can find me anywhere. I'm at Britt Siva on Instagram. My website is brittsiva.com on the Facebook. And then my podcast is called The Thriving Stylist Podcast, where I agree. I would love to have more interviews with Tara. And this is the first of many for the two of us, I hope.
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, guys, new episode coming out, I think next week. So let's get back to it. All right, have a good one.